Good morning. Hi guys. Welcome back. It's been a while. Hopefully your other class went well. If you could please let me know in the chat that you are here for day 11. We will get started very shortly. Okay. So, welcome back. I'm sure you guys have all heard the announcement by now. We are not returning to school this squad. So you will be in online till the end of the year. I actually, frankly, was a little bit surprised by that announcement. I thought they were going to send everybody back. I understand the thinking behind it. Mostly that keeping students back for an additional couple weeks will probably mean that we would delay, or hopefully we would delay a fourth wave until after a large percentage of the population has already been vaccinated. That's the idea behind it, and to leave the summer open so people have more freedom during the summer. I mean, it is sensible. It impacts parents adversely, I suppose, who, especially if you require school for childcare. I don't know if anybody here is at home looking after their younger siblings, but I'm sure that that's maybe not unpleasant, but it certainly can be difficult. So I completely understand. But, well, here we are. So anyway, this is what we're going to do. I wanted to mention that you should have back 3 of 4 of your assignments. So both of your vocabulary lists and your a species spotlight assignment. Please have a look at those. Have a look at the comments. I put comments both on the assignment itself, because Brightspace converts your Google Docs into a PDF so that I can leave a comment right on top of it. And I also leave comments in the rubric usually. If you're curious about like my feedback. A few people on the Species Spotlight assignment, I have asked if you could, well, actually for some people I couldn't open their Species Spotlight assignment. So if that's you, check your email, please. You may need to fix something there. I've definitely emailed you if that's the case. For some students, you may have missed the boat on the instructions a little bit. In other words, you have some significant portions of the assignment that are missing, and if that's true, I've mentioned in the comments at the end if you would consider resubmitting. Usually, if a student hands in something and they've completely missed the boat, and it's a fail, unless it looks flagrant, like you simply did not care, in which case, sorry, that's on you. But I mean, if it looks like a misunderstanding, I usually offer you the opportunity to resubmit with some updates. And so for some of you, I have mentioned that in the comments as well. So please actually read the comments, because I would like you to resubmit, because I don't want you to tank your mark with something because you had a misunderstanding. Not that one assignment would tank your mark anyway, but it is going to influence it. So that being said, there are a few students that still owe me assignments from the first block. Not a lot, thankfully. There's only a few. But for those of you that do, those need to come in immediately. Like today. They must be submitted today. Don't put them off. What's going to happen if you put them off? And I know I've mentioned this class before to this class before, but things are going to start stacking. The days are very busy. And it's not like you're just going to have a few hours during the day to complete that stuff. You won't. The course is very busy. I have time set aside for the major assignments, but I don't have time for you to catch up. So please make your best effort to get that in as soon as possible today, ideally. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself into trouble, guys. There's already some people in my other section. Now they only have 3 days with me at the end of your block. And I have some major concerns about some of those students finishing the course. They once you get stuff stacked and you go to your other course, most of the time that other course is going to have a bunch of stuff for you to do too. And it's not like you're just going to be like sitting around on a day and being like, oh, I guess I should finish this project for 2 hours. You won't do it. Or, I mean, I guess I don't know you personally. Maybe you will. But if you're telling yourself that, all I can say is that when students tell me that, it's very unlikely to actually happen in real life. And that has been the situation that has caused people to not get this credit at the end for virtually everybody who has not completed it, is kicking the can down the road and saying, I'll get this done, I'll get this done. But you just never do. And then you just don't get the credit at the end. Or you decide in the last 3 days, I'm going to get this done. And you don't, because you can't get it done because you don't have enough time to actually finish it properly. Or you decide to hand in something half finished. It's not very good. And it ends up tanking your mark at the end of the semester. So again, don't get yourself into that position. Stay on track. Just like in the previous block, I am flexible with deadlines. So if you are like, I can't get this in, I have something personal going on, I can't do it by this deadline, that's fine. That's fine. Like, that's real, guys. I am more than happy to accommodate that, but you have to communicate with me. So send me an email, let me know what's going on, let me know a reasonable date that you think is reasonable for you to complete that work. And it should be within a few days, okay? I've had people email me and say, oh, I'll get that to you by the beginning of the next block. You mean in 3 weeks? Yeah, no, that's not okay. So there's going to be no 3-week extensions. But if you have because you won't get everything done. I'm not going to put you in a position where you ask for an extension that is going to probably lead to you not getting the credit at the end. I mean, that's not smart for me to do that or you. So no, don't do that. But if you need a couple extra days, a day or two for a quiz or an assignment, just let me know that. It's not a big deal. But you have to be communicative, okay? You can't just go silent and disappear, because when students do that, the end product of that is, from my end, I'm assuming you're not here. I don't have no contact with you, and so my assumption is that you have decided to peace out on this course and you're not going to complete it. I have to assume that, because it basically it's like you disappeared one day and you just never came back and never said anything to me. My assumption is that you are done with the course and you're not planning on completing it if you're not going to communicate with me. So you have to let me know where you're at. So that being said, I don't want to rip on anybody here in particular, or I don't want to go on and on about this, but I've seen some people start to get into trouble. And keep in mind that as we get towards the end of this block, let me pull up the schedule for you so you can see where we are. So the calendar is under the day 1 introduction. Okay, so you guys are in the light gray, in the gray here. It's June 3rd. So I have you until June 18th. That's the last day of this course, technically. Okay? Normally, at the end of each unit, things come due the next day at midnight. Okay, that's what we've been doing for every unit so far. For every unit, we have had a major assignment, a vocabulary list, and a quiz. 3 things, always 3 things, at the end of every unit, due the day after the end of the unit. Okay? Every single time. And before you left me last time, I asked you to hand in your homework portfolio for the first 2 units. That's one extra thing, although it's not a separate thing I'm asking you to complete. I'm just asking you to hand in what you've already completed. I don't have that still from some people, by the way. And that's on you. So if you're not going to show me that you're completing any homework, as far as I'm concerned, you are completing none. So that's fine that these are choices, but I am certainly going to indicate on your report card that you haven't completed any homework this semester. All I can do is go by what you show me. So, I mean, if you're telling me, yeah, I did it, but I'm going to hand it in at this later day or whatever. I mean, what do you want me to do with that? Anyone can say that. So I just have no confirmation that anything is actually done. So hand in the homework portfolio. There will be one that is due on the last day of the course, June 18th, and it will be for the last 3 units. Please hand it in, guys. I mean, I can't force you to hand it in, but I'm going to assume if you don't hand it in on that day, you didn't do any homework this quad. All right, and I will indicate that on your report card too. I mean, you know what you need to do here, but most people didn't. Most people did it, but a lot of people didn't. So there's at least a handful, and there shouldn't be a handful, but there's a handful of students that didn't hand it in. So you get a normal report card at the end of this period, and I have to evaluate you on, did you complete your homework on time? Are you completing work independently during class? Like, I have no confirmation of that. So you got to give me something to work with here. Do I sound frustrated? It's only because as I was compiling your midterm reports, there were a higher proportion than usual of students not submitting things, which is problematic. And I think it has something to do with the weather, possibly, because it's a lot nicer and it's a lot more difficult to just be like sitting down and hardcoring through this stuff, which I get, but I mean, we all have a job to do here. So anyway, that day, that last day of the course, Friday, June 18th, that is the due date for all of the last unit's stuff. Okay, I'll mention this as we get closer to the day, but normally it would be the day after the last day where things are due, but this is the last day of the course for you. So everything is due on the last day of the course for the last unit. So your homework portfolio for the end of the course is due on this day. Your quiz is due on this day. Technically you could write the quiz on the weekend, maybe on the Saturday. But keep in mind that pretty much immediately when you hand these assignments in for the last unit, I'm going to mark them, and I basically have to prepare your report cards right away, because then I'm going to be coming back to my other class. I will get all their stuff in, and I have to prepare their report cards right afterwards. So there's really like no gap here. So that weekend after June 18th, which is the 19th and the 20th, that's when I have to mark all of your assignments for the end of the course. So it's a pretty firm deadline. There is a major assignment in this unit, just like there is in all the other units. However, the last major assignment is optional. Okay, you still need to finish the vocabulary list and the quiz, but the major assignment component is optional. It's a bonus assignment. We'll talk about that more in the last unit, but you don't have to do the last assignment. And part of the reason behind that is this is an opportunity for students to catch up, and I don't accept the last assignment after June 18th. There is a hard cutoff. That is something that you should get used to, by the way, because in most university courses, after a deadline, there is no way to submit work. What used to happen, at least at UW where I went, was your lab reports were due on Friday at noon, and at Friday at 12:01, someone would come and remove the Dropbox. I mean, we didn't hand things in electronically back then because it was a physical paper stuff, but the Dropbox was taken away. It did not exist after 12:01, and there was no way to hand it in. That's something that you guys should get used to. That exists, guys. There are hard deadlines where you just simply cannot submit stuff after a deadline, and this is a hard deadline for you. Now, I will say, is it weighted the same as the others? Yes, it is. It's weighted the same. If you are coming up to this point in the course, and I will give you a mark update shortly, and you're not happy with your mark, let's say you have a mark in the 70s or something, or the low 80s or something, you're like, oh, I want to have a mark in the 90s. I would say the last assignment is probably a good option for you. Put some work into it, hand in something quality, improve your mark. Do you have a 98 in this course? I'm going to say that last assignment is probably not ideal for you to complete. You could do it if you want, but I mean, it's pretty much even odds at that point that maybe you lose a mark for missing something somewhere, and that it ends up bringing your mark down 1% instead of up 1%. So I would say that if you're somewhere in the mid 90s, this last assignment is probably not for you. I mean, again, you can do it if you want. I'm not going to say either way, but I see people doing stuff like that all the time, and they complain at the end and they say, well, can you not count that? No, I'm going to count it. You made me mark it. So I'm definitely going to count it at the end. But realistically, you don't have to do it. So I can see it's going to be the last week of school. And you're not going to want to do it. I mean, I wouldn't if I was in your shoes. So, I mean, take the free pass if you can afford it. If you need it, by the way, if you're doing very poorly and you need to improve your mark, maybe even to get the credit, you should definitely do it. That's what it's for. But But I think that some people do it because they're like, oh, I have a 98 and I want 100 or something like that. Maybe you could try. I don't think that that's probably a great route for you, but that's fine. I'll completely leave that up to you. But it is a bonus assignment. I just want to make that clear for everybody. Now that's just the final assignment, the presentation in the evolution unit. Everything, there's no other bonus assignments. Again, I just want to make this really clear. This is a hard deadline here on this day. I'll mention as we approach the day, but everything has to come in by here. The only exception to that would be if we are in an ongoing conversation, you and I, about you catching up. Let's say that you've fallen behind at some point during the second block, and we have made a plan to get you caught up. Okay, and maybe that plan extends a deadline beyond June 18th. That's fine. I mean, again, life happens, guys. I've dealt with all kinds of stuff this year. People have had sick family members. People have had to work. Students have had to work to support their family, or childcare, or like you name it. Okay, and like that stuff's real. Okay, I'm not going to pretend that like you're not living a life, and like people have real circumstances that require flexibility. That's not a big deal. Okay, I'm here to support you. I'm not here to just be like, no credit. I cut your credit off here. I'm not going to do that. But that being said, unless you have some extenuating circumstance, just get your stuff done. Okay, being lazy is not an extenuating circumstance. Although I know a number of people feel like it is, but it's really not. So anyway, I am flexible. Communicate with me if you need something. I'm not trying to put you in a bad place, but you need to get your stuff done. So, I mean, either way, even if you are in a bad place and we have an extended deadline, you still have to get it done. I mean, you still, and the reasoning behind that is I have to certify at the end of the course that you have met and understand like the essential learnings of the course. And if you can't demonstrate that through these summative assignments, which by the way, I've cut down to the bare minimum, then I can't certify that you've done that at the end of the semester. So that's why people don't get the credit when they don't complete everything. If you were doing this course in class, I mean, obviously it would be over a much longer period of time, but we normally have far more assignments than this. And there are other opportunities for you to demonstrate your understanding of a whole host of different things. And that's my preference. But the problem is if I try and squeeze that kind of stuff into this timeline, people are overwhelmed. I mean, and obviously I would be too. So I had to do it differently. So that's where we are. Anyway, that's the schedule. Let's talk about the animals unit. Now, can somebody remind me, have I gone over the medical technology presentation? I can't remember if I did before the break or not. No. Okay. I'll do that quickly. So just like with all the other units, I know we already did day 10, so we started this unit already and like went through the basics of the digestive system. But just remember that there are always the 3 evaluations in every unit. So there's a vocabulary list, which hopefully you've already started. There's a presentation. It's on a medical technology, which I'm going to discuss right now. And there's a quiz due the day after the last day of the unit. Okay, so just so everyone's aware, it's the same in every unit. I know people have emailed me and said like, oh, I wasn't aware of this. I wasn't aware that this was coming due. Every unit is the same. Okay. All right. Cool, Andrew. No worries. So what you are going to do is you are going to select a medical technology that either diagnoses or treats an illness of the respiratory, circulatory, or digestive system. Okay, those are the 3 systems that we're going to look at in detail in this systems unit. we're going to look at the respiratory, circulatory, and digestive system. So you need to pick a device, a medical device, that either diagnoses or treats an illness of one of those three systems. Or it could be more than one, but it has to be minimum one of those three systems. Okay? The last time we did this assignment, a number of students did things like, oh, I just figured out, and this is like part of the way into their assignment, that this is actually the renal system and not the circulatory system or the excretory system, or this is whatever, the central nervous system, and can I still do it? No. No, you can't. People get mad at me. They say, well, but I already did it. Why? Why did you already do it? It has to be from one of the three systems. The purpose of this is that you're going to demonstrate knowledge of the three key systems: digestive, respiratory, and circulatory. And by key, I just mean the ones that we are discussing in this unit. Okay, that's the whole point of this. Now, it does say that you have to demonstrate knowledge of the three, but realistically, you only need to demonstrate knowledge of one of the three. So just to be clear, you don't need to discuss all three systems. You just need to discuss one of the three systems. Okay, and then the other part here is that you're going to sort of connect that system to a technology. Okay, so that's the second part. And we're going to talk about the history of that technology and do a little bit of research onto that specific technology. Okay, so that's sort of the overarching goal here. So try and remember that while you're doing the presentation, what you're showing me, what you're trying to show me, is your knowledge of that system that you've chosen and your knowledge of this device that you've chosen. So whenever you have an opportunity to discuss the anatomy or the function of that anatomy, which is the physiology, you always take that opportunity to discuss that thing. Okay, even if it doesn't directly say it in the instructions, the purpose of this is for you to discuss the anatomy and physiology of your system that you've selected and your technology. Okay, so just as an aside, some people do this project and don't really mention any specific anatomy about the circulatory system, if it's circulatory system. That you miss the point. You miss the point of this. This is an opportunity for you to show me your understanding of the system. Okay, so you should have that idea in the back of your mind as you're putting this project together. That's the purpose of it. Okay, so think about that as you're putting this together. Now, as you do the project, you are going to be required to create a research document. Now, this is probably usually the poorest done component of this project. Okay, I'm going to show you a sample research sheet so you see what it looks like. All right. So first of all, you need to have your sources listed here in full APA citation. Okay. APA, American Psychological Association citation. In English or in the arts, it's standard to use MLA, which is I actually don't even know what MLA stands for. I'd have to look that up. I'm not sure. But in the sciences, APA is typical. Certainly, I used APA for everything that I did in undergrad in my science degree. So, and actually in grad school as well. But we're going to have to get into the habit of properly citing sources. I'm still seeing in grade 11 students just putting a web link as their source. And you can't do that. There's almost no occasion where that's okay to do that. And part of the reasoning behind that is you need to include when it was accessed and things like that. What is the title of the thing that you're citing? Who wrote it? I mean, like, that stuff is important. You can't just say, got it at this web link. So just as a heads up, that's never acceptable in the sciences, and certainly from this point forward in the sciences, you will never do that. So, Modern Languages Association. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now, when you're publishing papers, let's say that you're in grad school and you're writing a paper, or maybe you're doing your undergrad thesis. Some programs have an undergrad thesis, mine didn't, but you may actually have to attempt to publish something through a scientific journal. And that's when you get into like a weird zone, because scientific journals have their own citation methodology per journal. So every journal has a different way that they want you to cite things. I know that's really silly in my opinion. That doesn't even make any sense. But at that point, what you actually do is, instead of creating a works cited like this, you put all of the information into a specific kind of software. There's actually several different kinds of software that do this. They offer it to you for free, by the way, in university. And so it keeps the information about your source in this software. And then you just put like a number in your text as you're writing. And then you just let it know at the end which journal you're going to submit to, and it will automatically use the correct citation mechanism, both in the text and in the works cited at the end. So that's handy. It basically automates the entire process for you, and everybody uses that in higher learning. So we don't need to do that here, but for now, let's just practice the APA thing, okay? So for this, I mentioned here that you can use the Cite This For Me Chrome extension, which is great. Basically, you just click a button on Chrome, and it just gives you a citation, an APA citation. Or you can use citationmachine.net. I believe it even has a tool where you can just put the URL of your website that you're getting the information into citationmachine.net, and it will find all of the information that needs to go in your citation. So, I mean, the process is mostly automated already for you. It's not very difficult to do at all. So, just make sure that you're using APA citation. You'd be surprised how many students don't use it in grade 11. Maybe you're one of them, but at this point forward, it's a must. Okay, and you need to do this in every science: physics, chemistry, biology, everything, Earth and space. So there's my APA citation. The purpose of this document, as far as I'm concerned, Mohammed, none whatsoever. What's the difference between the different citations, MLA and APA? Nothing. I mean, they're organized differently in terms of what comes first, what comes second, how you format the different parts. Some use bolding, some don't use bolding, some use quotation marks, some don't use quotation marks. It's honestly just a leftover of another age where we just didn't have standardization in the 1900s, and no one has ever decided to standardize this. APA has kind of floated to the top in the sciences as being sort of like a general format that is acceptable for everyone. So I guess it's kind of standardized now. But like I said, every journal actually has their own system. So there really is no standard, and there's no reason for it. It's bonkers. It's such a silly system. And it's absolutely not justifiable in any way. So I guess I don't have a good answer for you on this one, Mohammed. Now, I do know why this information is necessary, why you need to include this information in a citation, but why you need to have different citations for different journals there's no reason. That's just a bunch of silliness. And there's lots of that kind of stuff in academia, guys. I'm sorry to say. I wish everybody came together all the time and said, hey, this is the best way to do things. It's obvious. Let's just do this. They don't do that. So it would be really handy. So what's the purpose of this research document? This is where you're going to synthesize your understanding of the material that you're researching. And most people, I think, when they do something like this, use it incorrectly. What they do is they copy and paste stuff from their source, and then when they make their project, they just copy and paste it from here into their project. That is the worst thing that you can possibly do. That is a guaranteed way that you are going to plagiarize your source material. So the purpose of this document is, one, to prevent plagiarism, okay? Because in order to make this document, you'll notice that I'm asking you to write down in point form, in your own words, your understanding of your source material. Okay, so you're going to go through and say, okay, I just read this article about radiation therapy. And what did I get out of it? All right. I mean, and you can do this small blocks at a time. You don't have to do the whole article. But radiation in radiation therapy destroys DNA. And I also learned that radiation is a type of gamma wave. That's the part of the electromagnetic spectrum that it's from. Boom, boom. Okay? In your own words, you have synthesized the information from the article. Try not to paraphrase. Paraphrasing is something that you do in English class, okay? Paraphrasing is about saying something in a different way to like practice your English skills. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is you synthesizing the information, reading it, understanding it, and then writing down your understanding of that information. That's different than paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is just kind of switching some words around to make it sound different. This is writing down your understanding, okay? And this is the same kind of thing that you should be doing if you're doing your vocabulary list, and let's say that you need more information about a term. I've noticed in a lot of people's vocabulary lists, what they're doing is just paraphrasing. They're just finding a definition and just saying, okay, well, I'm going to switch the and take out the or here and put a comma. And it's like, well, now this is my own words. Nope, it's not. That's paraphrasing. Paraphrasing is, in fact, a form of plagiarism. You are not changing the way that an idea is being expressed when you paraphrase. Not really. In English class, you can get away with that stuff. But in the sciences, it's not really changing what you're expressing, okay? You don't quote in the sciences. It's extremely rare to find quotations in scientific literature because when you're discussing ideas, you don't quote. You're always discussing your understanding of the idea from the source material. Now, you do have in-text citations. If you were writing a scientific paper and you're using an idea that's not your idea, you would put that right in the paper and say, this right here is an idea from these scientists. This right here is an idea from these scientists, and you do that. I'm not expecting you to do that here, okay? I don't need in-text citation. We'll leave that for if you do a final paper in one of your senior science courses or in any of your science courses in university or college. They're probably going to require you to do in-text citation. we're not at that level here. I'm not going to make you go to that much work. But what I do want you to do is synthesize. That is the key, okay? So synthesizing information is all about reading it, understanding it, and putting it in your own words. If you do that in your research document as you do your research, then when you use this to produce your final product, you will not plagiarize. It's not possible to plagiarize because you don't have the original source in here. You have your understanding of the source, which is exactly what should be going into your final product. Okay? So you create this as you're doing your research. I mentioned that you need at least 2 reliable sources. Realistically, you should have more than 2. 2 is like the absolute bare minimum, but you should have at least 2 sources. A lot of people ask me about Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a great starting point. It is a fantastic starting point for research in the sciences. In most areas of the sciences, it is as accurate or more accurate than an encyclopedia. For real. Wikipedia is fantastic. It's very rarely vandalized for scientific articles. If you're looking at Wikipedia for politics or something like that, highly problematic. People are going to edit that in order to make it seem one way or the other, or you got to be very careful when you're looking at it for that particular type of information. But for science stuff, it's generally excellent. However, you don't usually cite it. What you need to do is you need to look at where they got their information for the Wikipedia article, which is usually referenced at the bottom, and you need to look at the source material. So those are the articles that you need to be reading, not necessarily the Wikipedia article itself. And the reason for that is because Wikipedia articles do not have an editor listed, and they do not have an author listed because it's a group authored document. And so at the end of the day, you're not saying, I trust so-and-so, so I'm going to use so-and-so's information. That doesn't exist on Wikipedia because you don't know who you're saying I trust. I trust this pseudonym of this Wikipedia editor, not their real name. You can't do that in academia. And that's the reason why you can't use Wikipedia. I think people don't explain why you can't use it. It's because you're not pinning an idea on a person. You're pinning it on a group of nebulous people who you don't know who it is. And so there's no way to confirm the validity of information that is just coming from a group of anonymous people. So you have to always find additional sources outside of Wikipedia. And so the sources really should be from outside. You can use it as a great starting point. And again, Wikipedia is awesome, but it's not great as a academic source. And certainly in university, they'll never let you use it as an academic source because, again, you can't pin the authorship down to a person. Okay, question. Sadie, when doing our vocab list, if the word has a really short definition, how would you suggest we work around paraphrasing? Because sometimes changing the wording doesn't make sense. That's fair. You don't need to paraphrase. You just need this. This is what I want you to consider, Sadie. If somebody in class or a parent asked you, "Hey, I just read this word in an article I was reading. Heterozygous. What's that?" When you turn to your friend or parent and explain to them what heterozygous is, that's what you should write. Okay? And I don't think that you would be parroting the dictionary definition if your friend said to you, like, what does heterozygous mean? Heterozygous is when it's a state in the genetic information in cells where the two alleles do not have the same, the two alleles are not the same on homologous chromosomes. Like big A and little a, or big R, little r, or something like that. And you give some examples, okay? And then the second component for the vocabularies, which many people are missing, by the way, is that you need to explain why that particular term is important for the unit. I mentioned this on many people's feedback. That's the second component that almost everybody is missing. You need to tell me why that term is an important term in the unit. So for heterozygous, I have to consider this for a second. Knowing whether or not a particular gene is heterozygous or homozygous for an individual can be used to help determine which particular allele they will pass on to their offspring. And that really is why it's important for us. If someone is homozygous or heterozygous, we can use that information to decide which alleles are going to be passed on to the offspring. Is it for sure going to be little a, or could it be big A or little a? That's the reason why it's important to know that within the context of the unit. And that's sort of the second part of the definition that you need to make sure that you explore. Just as a heads up to everybody, most people left that out on their first vocabulary list. Or on the first two. I didn't discount it hugely for the first couple ones, but I'm going to look at that a lot more for the next list because I've given everybody feedback at this point, so you should know to include that right now. Anyway, this is important. You get a separate mark here for your research. Please make sure that you're doing this and that you are not going back at the end and saying, all right, what did I get from where? I got to make this research sheet. Feel free to copy this template. Use this template when you make your research sheet, okay? Or, I mean, you could just obviously just make this table, but you need to have a research sheet and you hand it in. Okay, enough talking about that, but I just want to talk about the importance of that because it's actually a really important skill to develop to prevent plagiarism and to help you synthesize information from sources. Okay, so that was the first part. Let me keep going here. So you're going to do the research sheet. Then, in your actual presentation, what do you need to discuss? Well, you need a title slide. Tell me your name, course code, which technology have you picked. Okay, that one's nice and simple. For each of these, by the way, these are not one slide per idea. When I say, like, this is the next quote-unquote slide, I just mean this is the next idea. This idea technology development could be 3 slides or 4 slides. It's just the next idea. Okay, it's just the next heading. I'm not saying that each one of these has to be 1 slide. I mean, you have to have at least 1 slide for each of these, but you can have more than 1 easily, okay, if you need to spread information out, and you should spread it out. So for the technology development, you're just going to tell me about the history of your technology that you've chosen. Okay, if you picked MRI, what's the history of the MRI? When was it first invented? Who invented it? Why was it first invented? How has that machine changed over time? Give me a timeline. Tell me about what an MRI machine was like in 1951. Tell me about what an MRI machine is like in 1971. How has it changed between those 2 time periods? What is it like now? What's the major difference in MRI machines? How has it developed over time? Okay, so you're going to tell me about the development of your technology. Because you are required to discuss development, I would recommend that you don't pick a technology that was just invented. Okay? Obviously, you could talk about something like CRISPR technology or, I mean, and those are fascinating. I'm not saying that they're not, and they are used to treat specific illnesses, and you probably could connect it to the digestive, respiratory, or circulatory system. However, there's not a great opportunity there to discuss the history of its development, and so I probably wouldn't pick a brand new technology. Now, something that has 10 years of development under its belt, like some people have done capsule endoscopy, which was invented in the mid-90s, I think. That's when you like swallow a camera and like a pill, and then it like goes through your digestive system and takes pictures all the way through. That has a development history over the last 20 years, and so you can talk about that. But I wouldn't pick something that was just invented, because it's probably not going to fit well with this assignment. The second component here is I want you to tell me about how it works. When you're describing how it works, it's really important that you don't just tell me how to deploy it. Okay? A lot of people get confused on this section, and they just say, okay, MRI machine. Well, you got to get the patient to lie down. Then you slide their head into it, or whatever you're going to scan. Somebody pushes a button. It makes a bunch of noise. They slide out. And then bada bing, bada boom, you have your image, your MRI image. That is a description of the deployment of an MRI machine, not on how it works. Okay? What you need to describe is, on a technical level, how is it actually doing the thing that it does? How does an MRI machine actually make an image from your body? And it doesn't have to be extremely technical. You're giving me the broad strokes here, but give me an overall broad description about how your technology actually functions. Okay? If it's a type of camera technology, how does the camera work? Tell me more about that. You have to dig into this a little bit, and on a technical level, tell me how your technology actually functions. Okay, Bree, for the vocab list, can we include something like pancreas and write the function rather than the definition, since most body parts and stuff are hard to define? So in this body systems unit, you can absolutely include anatomy. Yes, pyloric sphincter. Sure. When you're going to describe the pyloric sphincter, there are two components that are important. First of all, well, you do need to tell me what it is. It is a component of the digestive system, and you can tell me about its location in the system, and you can tell me about its function within the system. And then at the end, you also have to tie it back. Why is it particularly important to know about that within the context of the unit? So yes, that you are going to look at those terms a little bit differently when you're talking about anatomical stuff. I would say that if you're going to pick stuff that is anatomy, you should make sure that you're choosing stuff that is definitely new. Don't pick something like stomach. Okay, I understand that your understanding of the stomach is going to change depending on what you learn in this course, but realistically, the idea of a stomach, a holding location for food once you swallow it, you know, maybe it's going to get broken down with acid and some enzymes, but I don't think that's a new concept to you. The idea behind the vocabulary list is that you're writing down new concepts. It's a study aid for you. Now, that being said, if your use of the stomach, let's say you pick that for your list, is helping you remember the complex function of the stomach that we discuss in class, then you know what? It is probably valid to have it there in your vocabulary list. So I'll let you make the call on that. But if it's something that you're very familiar with already, it kind of defeats the purpose to put it in your vocabulary list. You're supposed to be picking core terminology from the unit and creating a study aid for yourself. Sure. When you say processes, do you mean like, can you be a little bit more specific? You mean including something like proteolysis? We didn't even talk about the actual chemical process that's happening when the enzymes are breaking it down. You mean like an enzyme or something like that? Like protease or amylase or something like that? Give me an example of the thing that you're thinking of, Bree. Yeah, you can include an enzyme or something like that. Is that really core terminology for the unit? Probably not. I mean, we're kind of on a barrier here. Sure. I would pepsin, trypsin, sure. Realistically, I would probably, because the problem is when you try and define those, your definitions for each of those is going to be the same definition. It's a protein that is involved in breaking down whatever. I mean, sure, there are minor differences between them. One is breaking down long polypeptides. One is breaking down short polypeptides. One is breaking down dipeptides into amino acids. Sure, there are minor differences, but you might want to consider grouping those together under one entry. The problem with putting that stuff into your vocabulary list, Bree, is that if you do that, you'll have 30 words in a day. And you're going to leave most of the content out of your vocabulary list. And the idea is that you're kind of creating this as a progressive list through the entire unit. I'd probably group those together under one entry, but I'll leave it up to you. I'll leave it up to you. They are valid. I don't think it's invalid to use those things in a vocabulary list because it is new vocabulary to you. So I think it is valid to include those. And so when you do that, yeah, you're going to talk about what it is. It is an enzyme, which is a type of protein. And then you're going to tell me about its function. Its function is to do this. And then you're going to tell me about why it's particularly important in the unit. So yes, you can do that. Okay, sorry. So you're going to talk about how it works, the technology. And then lastly, you're going to talk about its interaction with your illness that you've chosen. So you need to pick an illness of the respiratory, circulatory, or digestive. And I'm saying or, so it doesn't have to be of all three, just one of the three systems. And you're going to talk about that illness in detail. Okay, so you're going to tell me about the causes of your illness, the symptoms of your illness, and the treatment of your illness. And in the course of doing that, you should be using information that you got in the unit. So when you're talking about the symptoms, tell me about the anatomy. What part of the system is it actually affecting? Okay. If you're talking about causes, again, use the anatomical terms that you're using that you're learning in the unit. Okay. So as you discuss this, keep in mind that the purpose is to connect what you learned in the unit to your illness. Okay, so try and incorporate as much stuff from the course as you can here. That's the point. So you're going to describe an illness, and then the second part is you're going to describe how your device interacts with that illness. So how is your device used to diagnose it, or how is your device used to treat that particular illness? For example, if you're going to talk about how MRI is used to diagnose no, that's not a good example. Pancreatic cancer. Okay, there's an actual use. Okay, maybe find an MRI of somebody with pancreatic cancer. I mean, show me what it looks like. Show me how the device has actually been used to diagnose this particular illness. I don't think that will be very hard to find. So anyway, what I'm saying, this last part here is where you're really going to show me the connection between your system that you've chosen and your device and an illness. Okay, bring all those sort of three components together. All right. And again, just to quickly mention, you only need to focus on one of the three systems. You don't have to talk about all three. And you got to works cited at the end. It's your last slide. All you have to do is grab off your research sheet your APA citations, boom, 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 boom. Just put them on the last slide. Okay, no big deal. So what are you going to hand in? Well, this is a live presentation. You are going to give this presentation and screen record it. Okay, use whatever screen recording software you like, Loom, Vidyard, Screencastify. There are probably 10 different ones that exist. All of them are free as far as I'm aware. Or at least have a 5-minute video you can make for free. I mentioned earlier about Loom. It has a free version. You can get it. The instructions are like on the first day on that page. But you can get the full version for free if you're a student. But it really doesn't matter. If you need to make 2 videos, because maybe your video is 6 minutes long and you do like a 5-minute and a 1-minute, totally fine. Just hand in the 2 videos. But you do have to hand in a video. So inevitably at the end of this, I get people just handing in the slideshow. But remember, on your slideshow, you're only going to have prompts for your presentation. You're not going to have a script. Your slideshow is not a script. It is prompts for your presentation and images that you're going to refer to in your presentation, but not a script. I think that's the number one thing that people get wrong when they make a presentation is they write a script for themselves. Do not write a script. When you write a script, there's two things. The problem is that your audience is either going to read the slides and ignore you, or they're only going to listen to you and ignore the slides. In other words, the slideshow or you is going to be completely useless if you put a script up on your slides, because it's very difficult for you to do both, to read what's up there or to listen to what the person is saying if it's a script. And so you don't get anything out of having the presentation visually if it's a script. So it's never a good idea to have a script. That's not the purpose of a presentation. So I'm really quickly now going to go through some tips on how to create a good presentation. Some things for you to consider. Okay, and I've attached all this to the assignment so you can see it. You can go back and look at this later if you want. Use bullets. This is not a script. So, for example, say copper is, and then it's a highly lustrous metal, really shiny, highly malleable. You're able to flex it into all different shapes. So again, it's not a script. It's just bullets and pictures, and you are going to do the filling in of this here with your quote-unquote script. How long should it be time-wise? Between 5 and 7 minutes. At the 5-minute mark, realistically, you can include everything you need to include within 5 minutes. I've seen some excellent presentations that were 5 minutes long. At around the 7-minute mark, I would say that's where you should cut it off at 7 minutes. Don't go above 8 minutes. So if you're at the 7-minute mark and you haven't said everything that you intended to say, I would say that you have some stuff in your presentation that doesn't need to be there, and you need to go back and do some editing, because you can really easily discuss all of these things within 7 minutes. So if it's going over 7, you have too much stuff. I would go back and start looking for some places to cut stuff that isn't required for parts of the assignment. Please don't hand in anything longer than 8 minutes. Just some off-the-cuff math here. If everybody hands in an 8-minute presentation, that's roughly 7 hours of marking for me. Okay, and that's taking into account the length of me watching the video, commenting on the video, because I have to think about it and comment on it. And so when I put all that time together, it takes me about 7 hours to review one class's set of videos. And that's fine. That's fine. I mean, that's a very large number, but that's totally fine. But if we go over 8 minutes, then we start going into the 10 to 12 hour territory, which is time that actually does not exist for me. So please don't do that. I don't want to say I'll cut you off at 8, but if it starts creeping above 8, I don't have time to watch those presentations anymore. So let's just say don't go above 8. Okay, keep it under 8 minutes. Realistically, it shouldn't go over 7. And you can say everything you need to say in 5, but realistically, between 5 and 7 is fine. Okay, so hopefully that answered your question, Mohammed. Should be focusing on improvising based on our notes. Andrew, can you elaborate on what you mean by that? I'm not 100% sure what you mean. Focusing on improvising. You can write yourself a script. You're welcome to write yourself a script if that's what you mean. You absolutely can have a script, but just that's not what your slideshow is. Your slideshow isn't a script. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to practice going without a script. Realistically, anytime you give an academic presentation like this in university, or I mean, you're not gonna have a script. I suppose you could, but nobody does. The idea is that you actually know the content that you're presenting, and so you don't need to have a script in front of you. Yeah, exactly. I mean that's the end goal is to do that, Andrea, is to speak about your knowledge, and you're using the slides as like a jumping off point to explain your knowledge about each part. But you absolutely can write a full script. Yep, if you want to. I mean, there's no pressure on you not to write a script. If you're uncomfortable just speaking off the cuff, write a script. No problem. And also, please keep in mind, guys, I'm the only person that sees these videos, so you don't need to be nervous. I'm watching 33 of these in a row. I'm not analyzing the color of your tie, or I just I'm just looking. Are you expressing the objectives of the presentation or not? That's all. So you don't need to be self-conscious at all. I mean, I realize that that's easy to say and hard to do, but I'm the only one that will see these. So you never need to be self-conscious about that. I mean, you're just basically talking to the air here. I'm not going to be critical about you as a person. I'm only looking at the information that you're presenting. That's all. And a little bit about your presentation skills, but it's only to provide you with feedback. I'm really hoping that people aren't going to be concerned or feeling self-conscious about it. I might ask you, if your presentation is awesome, I might ask if I could potentially use it as an exemplar for a future class, but you can always say no. That is your right. It's only if you authorize me to do that. That being said, I have an exemplar attached to this assignment. So if you want to know what a completed version of this assignment looks like, that's like a 4+, that's attached. So you're welcome to look at the exemplar that's attached. It's a very good presentation from the last quad. It's a little on the long side, so they probably should have cut a couple things out of there. For example, they do a section where they talk about their system in detail. Like they just go through and they say, oh, the digestive system has these parts in it. You don't need to do that. That's like an extra part that doesn't need to be included. So the exemplar has a touch of a little extra stuff in it, but other than that, it's a very good presentation in terms of discussing all of the important things that need to be included. So yeah, but if you want to write a script, absolutely. Pictures. Have pictures. That's one of the big advantages to having a backdrop behind you while you're talking, is that you can refer to pictures of things. Before PowerPoint or these computerized presentations existed, this was very difficult to do in academia when people gave presentations. They had like a flip board or like a big paper board that they brought out with them, and it was terrible. You couldn't really see, but the real advantage here is that we can use pictures. Okay, so include pictures wherever you can. Use a font size that's readable. Don't use teeny tiny font, and don't crowd your slides full of text. So if you have 25 points, spread that out over 3 slides. Don't put that on a single slide. 25 points where it's just like a giant block of text. To an audience watching that, once you see 100 words on a slide, your brain goes, nope, not going to read that. I'm not going to engage with that slide. That is too much text. I don't care to read that. And so basically your slide becomes useless once you have that much text on it. So try and keep it brief. Don't overcrowd your slides. Don't use backgrounds like this or color schemes that are very ineffective. This is insanely difficult to read. You would be absolutely shocked to see how many students do this regularly with their presentations. They're like, oh, I found a bunch of cool pictures of the digestive system, and I use them as a background in each slide. And now all of my slides are illegible. It's so common to see this. I don't know why, but don't do this. Please put your slideshow in the correct order. I've given you a sequence to follow in my expectations. Please just follow the sequence. Unless there's a really good reason to put it in a different sequence, like it doesn't make sense based on how what you're discussing to put it. Some people mentioned, oh, well, I want to talk about my illness first, and then I'm going to talk about my history after, because in the history we're going to make reference to something about this illness, and I want to talk about the illness first. Okay, well, that makes sense. That makes sense. If you have a good reason to do it out of order, then I'm not going to care. However, other than that, please just put it in the order that I'm giving you, because I obviously mark it in that order. So I'm looking for things in a particular order. If there's things out of order, I usually assume it's missing from the presentation, and I might miss it. So just make it easier on yourself and just follow the order that I've given you. This goes back to a general rule that is going to serve you well if you remember it. When you make an assignment, try and make that assignment as easy to mark as you possibly can. Okay? That should be a goal that you have somewhere in the back of your mind when you make an assignment, because things that are easier to mark generally get better marks. And the reason for that is it's unlikely for the person assessing or evaluating your whatever it is to miss things that you have in your presentation if you're intentionally making it easy to mark. If you're going out of order or for no reason, you are intentionally making it more difficult to mark something. And I realize that you probably don't often think about that from that perspective. But I mean, and me, I'm very thorough. I go back, I watch things multiple times and stuff, which is why it takes me so long to mark these videos. But if you are handing something in university, there is a TA that is marking 400 of your thing. They're marking 400 papers. They're marking 400 lab reports. They are not going to be careful when they mark those things. If you have something out of order or is oddly phrased, they're going to say, I'm not spending an extra minute to go back and reread that and try and figure out what they're saying. I'm just going to assume it's wrong. I can guarantee you that that's what your TAs are going to do in university. They don't get paid to mark specifically. They just get a huge, I was a TA myself. You just get a huge load of stuff to mark. And often you're teaching courses as well. You're an RA, so you're teaching courses and you're doing research. And the end product of that is you're just trying to get stuff done. It's like an assembly line of reading through stuff and marking it. And unless you're doing your best to make it very clear and hit all of the assignment objectives in the correct order, they're going to miss stuff. And I guarantee you'll lose marks for stuff like that in university. So it's good to get into a habit of trying to make things as easy to mark as possible. That's just to help you out, because you would be absolutely blown away to see what TAs actually have to do. I mean, because profs don't mark stuff mostly. Mostly profs just come in, they do their lectures, they do their research, and they peace out of there. And they have someone else coming to do the marking who does not care. I don't want to say I don't care, but when I was a TA, like, I didn't know any of the students. It's imagine if somebody came to you and just dumped 400 papers on your desk and said, I need you to mark all these in 2 days. Because we're going to hand these back, and you don't know any of the people, and that's how it works in real life. So, I mean, I obviously care here. I have a vested interest in your success. I want everybody to be successful. I want to provide good feedback. I want everybody in the class to improve. I know you all. And that's one of the advantages to the high school system is it's not one-on-one, but at least I can provide a little bit of personal attention to you. But in university, you are a number. 100%. You're just going through as a number, especially in your first 3 years. Fourth year is a little different, smaller classes, but first 3 years you're going to be a number for sure. So just something to keep in mind. Check your spelling. Hand in professional product. I've noticed when doing the species spotlight assignment, clearly people are handing stuff in without editing. Guys, you have half sentences, phrases that make no sense, 2-word sentences where it makes no sense, a ton of spelling errors. Come on, guys. Take a minute and just read over the project before you hand it in. Like, I had people handing in things with blank slides where there's one word in the center of the slide. You know, things like that. Just like, what's happening? Did you look at this before you handed it in? Like, take a moment to give some semblance of professionalism to what you're completing. I understand that, like, a lot of these assignments, when you're completing them, they don't feel like they're super important to you or high priority. Now, that being said, a number of you are handing in things that I would publish. Exceptional assignments. So this is not applied to everybody by far. Some people are doing work in this course that is absolutely amazing. You know who you are. But other people are handing in things that I don't think they even looked at once they completed it and just submitted it. That's a real faux pas, guys. Take a little bit of pride in your work. Check your spelling. I mean, for goodness sakes, it underlines things in red when they're spelled incorrectly. You can't hand something in like that. That's really poor form. So don't do that if that's you. The idea of transitions and animations, these are fun if you are preparing a course for the great courses, or maybe you're making a YouTube video or something. But in an academic context, these are time wasters. So don't do any of this stuff in an academic presentation. Everybody in your audience will hate it because they're looking for efficiency. And lastly, make sure you have a properly formatted works cited. This is something that you need to practice because it is absolutely essential for absolutely everything you do in academia. There is no undergrad course that you're going to take where you don't have to do this, at least in the sciences. I don't know what they do in the arts, but in the sciences, you must use proper APA and you must cite every source in absolutely everything that you do. So try and get into the habit of always citing where stuff comes from and making sure that the sources you're using are not Joe's biology blog or something like that, and are real sources that have trustworthy academics in them. Okay, is this from the University of Wisconsin? Cool. Is this from the Joe's biology blog, which, by the way, I see stuff like that all the time? That is not a citable source. Who is the author of this? Joe. I don't do that. It's hard because you're when you're doing these projects, you're just trying to get it done. I get it. So you find a source and you're like, oh yeah, I've been looking for this information. I'm going to use Mike's Pest Control as a source for the ant life cycle. I don't think Mike's Pest Control is the best place for you to learn about the ant's life cycle. Sure, are they going to discuss the ant's life cycle? Is it possible that it's correct? Yeah, maybe. But that is not an academic source, guys. I'm so sorry. Don't look at Mike's Pest Control. I mean, I had to giggle for some of the sources that people used for their for their species spotlight assignment. Things that are like would never be considered academic sources. Don't do that. If you're really not sure if a source is acceptable because you're like, I'm not sure if this is academic, just ask. I'm happy to assess it with you, but it should have some semblance of academic reliability to it. An encyclopedia, an organization that is devoted to the ecology of a particular organism or ecology in general, or but not if it's a business's website. You have to be highly skeptical. If it's a blog, you should not use it. Do not use blog entries as citable sources. Okay. And that's it. I'm going to stop talking about this now because I feel like I've talked for a long time. But we are going to do a presentation now for every unit for the rest of the quad, which is why I'm discussing it right now. I talked about it in detail now because that is going to apply to every project that we do. So, as I mentioned, there is a exemplar attached. There it is right there. It's a fairly small video to download and watch. I highly recommend it if you're like, I don't know what this is supposed to look like at the end. Great video. Okay, so have a look at that exemplar. I highly recommend it. So what are we up to today? Finally, let's get to that. Sorry, I know I spent a lot of time on that, but it's because it applies to every project that we're going to do for the rest of the quad. So, whoopsie-daisy. Today, we are going to first start with a little review of the digestive system because it's been a while. You guys have been off doing your own thing for 2 weeks, in another course. Do you remember the digestive system? It was a long time ago. So this crash course video is an overview of the digestive system. What is the anatomy? And what basically happens at each location in the anatomy. Okay, this is to refresh your memory and to get you back into the unit again. So I highly recommend that you watch this. Now, if you're coming into this and you're like, I remember everything. I know the enzymes. I know the macronutrients. I know where they get digested. I know all the parts in the digestive system and what they do. Then you can skip this video because this video is not going to do a lot for you. But if you're just like, oof, give me a refresher. That's what this is for, okay? So I recommend it, but I'll leave it up to you. Hopefully you've created an Explore Learning account at this point. I know some people were having some difficulty with login earlier to their Explore Learning account. If that's you, please contact me. We'll try and get that figured out. But you should have created your account. Now, I think this link might be dead. Yes, I have to update that click here link. The link is correct on the day one information. So if you go to the content from the live stream and you scroll down to signing up for Explore Learning, that link works. I can click on that right now. Yeah, that one works. So that one has the correct code and everything on it. Although it's not, oh yes it is. It's showing right there. That's the code for our class. Our RRBTPK is our code. But we're going to do a little lab together. So what the lab is, oops, basically you are going to build a digestive system. It's kind of a fun lab. You're going to start with just a few components, and then you're going to run some food through the digestive system and see what gets digested and how it gets digested. And then it's going to walk you through as you keep adding components to the digestive system, and then seeing how that changes the digestion of the food that you're going to send through. It's a really cool lab. This is the kind of thing where you can't do this lab in real life. There's no way to do this in a physical lab. So this is a place where a digital lab is actually really shines. It's a really cool way of looking at the process of digestion, adding different parts of a real digestive system and finding out how that affects the digestion of the various nutrients in order to sort of better understand the function of the parts. Okay, so this is going to walk you through. It'll take you about, wait, what do I say about this? Give me one sec. Oh, I forgot to write it on there. It'll take you somewhere around maybe an hour and 45 minutes if you're going at a pretty good pace. I haven't updated this link, Andrea. You're watching me as I'm going here, so I haven't had an opportunity to update it yet. But if you go to the day one stuff, content from the live stream, and then you scroll down to signing up for Explore Learning, that's the same link, but this one works. So you just need to click this one instead. I'll go back and fix it, but I just have to wait till we're done here. But I will go back and fix it. Anyway, it's going to walk you through the digestive system. It goes through step by step and tells you what you need to do, and then where to click and what you're going to analyze for each one. Okay. When you're done, there are some questions on Explore Learning right below the gizmo. It's basically like an exit quiz, like my normal exit quizzes. Try it and see if you have a solid understanding of the digestive system. And if there are some things that you don't understand, go back and look at your notes. Try and figure out what you're not understanding about that question. And if you're really stuck, come and drop in during the Google Meet and we'll chat about it. And I'd be happy to walk you through any of those questions and help you figure out what you're missing. Okay? But again, keep in mind the exit quizzes are there as it's a check for you. Do I understand this? I think I understand this. And then you do the exit quiz and you find out, do you actually understand it? Because if there's stuff that you're not getting at the end, then there's a disconnect between what you think you know and what you actually know. In which case, we got to resolve that. So you should go back and check your notes. If you still don't understand it, then it's time for you to chat with me, and then we'll figure it out together. Okay, that's the idea here behind the exit quizzes. It's so that you're always getting feedback on how you actually understand the content. Do you actually understand the content? Because ideally, the first time that you get feedback shouldn't be after the quiz at the end of the unit. Because at that point it's too late. That's your summative evaluation. These little exit quizzes are your formative evaluations that help you figure out whether you're learning as you go. Okay, so I always recommend that you do the exit quizzes as you go, and come and talk to me if they're not working out for some reason. Okay, so that we can figure out what you're missing. That's why they exist. Learning block 2. I'm going to go over this now, but and the only reason I'm going over it now is in case you finish early. You're welcome to start this early. I don't think you will, but in case you are, we're going to watch a little documentary. It's called The Breath of Life. And there it is. It's linked right there. Once you're done reading watching The Breath of Life, there is a short reading from the textbook. It's page 438 and 439. Okay, this is just a basic introduction to the respiratory system. I really like this video because it shows a lot of cool shots of the inside of the respiratory system, stuff that is very difficult for us to actually show in the classroom, visuals that I don't have access to. So I highly recommend it. It's a pretty good documentary. It's a little bit old, but it's still good. And then once you're done reading that chapter, you should add any potential words to your vocabulary list, new stuff that you've learned about the respiratory system. In preparation for tomorrow, I'm going to get you to watch this short video. It's about 10 minutes long, and it is an introduction to this idea of energy. Why do we breathe? What is the point of taking in oxygen? And at the cellular level, it's going to talk about probably the most important chemical that you come across in biochemistry, which is ATP. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which we're going to discuss in detail tomorrow, is the energy chemical of life. It's what all cells run on. And this video talks a lot about how that process works with ATP. It's a great introduction to what we're going to discuss tomorrow about the respiratory system. So I'm just going to get that to be while we finish off today's content at the end of the day. Okay, I have a feeling that you'll likely be watching this during Learning Block 3. This is probably going to be into Learning Block 3. And then again, there's a tiny little exit quiz. This one is just about the basic anatomy of the respiratory system, mostly stuff that you get from chapter 10.1 here and this video. Although I think there's a question about ATP on there too. Okay, I think I messed up. Registering for Explore Learning, it only gives me options to register as a touch or parent, not as a student. Interesting. Andrea, if you give me 1 second here, we can jump into the Google Meet really quickly and figure this out, figure your login out. If anybody else is having login problems, please let me know in the chat. Don't send me an email, because I always watch the chat in the background. And then I'll be able to address your question faster if you drop it into the chat. I'm going to go off stream now and let you get to work on this. If you have any questions as you're going, please drop them in the chat. Oh, I see. Okay. We'll get that figured out, Andrea. Just give me 1 second. Anyway, if you guys need anything, let me know. I'm going to go off stream now. I'm going to jump into the Google Meet to quickly chat with Andrea about this. But if you guys need anything, I will be here. So, anyway, good luck with the lab. And if you're having login problems, don't wait for 2 hours to tell me that you're having login problems, and we'll get it figured out. Andrea, the link at the very bottom here of the page to the Google Meet, it's right here. If you wouldn't mind just jumping in there really quick, so we can try and diagnose what your login problem is. I'm just going to chat with you really quick. I assume we should come back 11:05. Yes, you should. Every day, 8:20, 11:05. No matter what, you have to come at those 2 times. No matter what, I always take attendance at those 2 times. Always. All right. See you at 11:05.